apparently not all Republicans are pushing conspiracy theories, if you will. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp sending what we'll call the clearest signal yet that he does not subscribe, will not engage in what he calls political theater. Governor spoke out against efforts by at least one member of the Georgia Assembly, a fellow Republican, who is demanding Kemp call a special session in order to oust DA Fani Willis down in Fulton County. Willis, as we know, just happens to be prosecuting a former president by the name of Donald Trump. Here is, we'll call him acutely irate, Brian Kemp.
Up to this point, I have not seen any evidence that DA Willis's actions or lack thereof warrant action by the Prosecuting Attorney Oversight Commission. But that will ultimately be a decision that the commission will make. Regardless, in my mind, a special session of the General Assembly to end run around this law is not feasible and may ultimately prove to be unconstitutional. The bottom line is that in the state of Georgia, as long as I'm governor, we're going to follow the law and the Constitution, regardless of who it helps or harms politically. Over the last few years, some inside and outside of this building may have forgotten that, but I can assure you, I have not. The oath I took with my hand on the Bible that's right behind me in January of 23 is the same Bible that I took in my inauguration in 2019. And in Georgia, we will not be engaging in political theater that only inflames the emotions of the moment.
All right, so there you have Brian Kemp, and that's the woman, of course, he was talking about. Fani Willis, of course, indicted Trump, 18 others, Rudy Giuliani, one of them, for trying to overturn the presidential election in Georgia by attempting to use those fake electors. Kemp refused to back Trump's election lies, and for that, Trump has called out Kemp at rallies and on social media again and again. Let's put up the post. In this one, Trump reserves all caps for Madam DA, but you get his point. He does not like at all Brian Kemp. They're just, they're enemies. Well, I'll just read it to you anyway. Governor Kemp of Georgia is fighting hard against, there it is, the impeachment of the crooked, incompetent, and highly partisan DA of Fulton County, Fani Willis, who has allowed murder and other violent crime to massively escalate. Former president wrote August 21 on his, do I have to use the word truth? His platform, it's that social platform. Crime in Atlanta is worst in nation, Trump writes. She should be impeached for many reasons, not just the witch hunt. I did nothing wrong. Okay, so let's just pause for a minute. That's not anything new. We're used to that from the former president. When people don't take his phone at night, he up all night doing that kind of thing. But what do you make of Brian Kemp's statement there? One of his fellow Republicans, Cenk, called for, of course, the special session to oust the DA, but there are others clamoring. They believe if she goes away, if they can get her out of there, the case goes with it, that RICO case. What say you?
Yeah, so the thinking there for the MAGA guys is if Trump wins the presidency, we knock out the 2 federal cases, he pardons himself. New York case they think is the weakest, I don't really agree. And then the only other state case left is Atlanta, where he's going to lose in that Georgia case, it appears, because they have overwhelming evidence. So they're thinking, well, why don't we just fire the prosecutor? And so that way we could protect our beloved and let him do any kind of law breaking that he likes, because we're the party of law and order. Anyways, but here Brian Kemp deserves a lot of credit. It was a strong statement. And he's saying, look, I don't care that she's on the other side and I don't agree with her, but we're not going to do this kind of unconstitutional action here in Georgia if I can help it. By the way, he might not be able to help it. There's a commission that they're thinking, they tried 3 different ways of ousting her, or they're thinking about 3 different ways. And the last one is a commission that does have the power to do it. And so we'll see if that winds up working or not. But Kemp is the important story here. So kudos to him for doing the right thing here and being strong about it. But it opens up one other thing that's got to be discussed here, which is that Kemp is actually a guy who could beat Trump in the Republican primary. Because those 8 folks that were up there, look, Vivek doesn't even want to beat him, and he's polling 3rd. DeSantis is a hot mess. Chris Christie is strong enough to beat him, but the Trump-loving base hates Christie so much that makes it less likely, obviously, right? Whereas Brian Kemp has beaten Trump already. Trump ran David Perdue, a former senator, a perfectly credible candidate, backed him 100% in a primary against Brian Kemp, and Kemp beat him with a 2x4. He beat him bad. It wasn't, and so that was really interesting that he took a Southern Republican base and easily defeated Trump in that, the Trump surrogate in that primary. And then Kemp outperformed the Trump candidates in that same state in 2022 by 8 points, which is a giant difference in an election. And he could make an argument, hey, with 8 points, we win this presidential race. And if you minus 8 points because you run Trump, we lose to someone like Biden. So I'm not saying here comes Brian Kemp, but all of a sudden that's a real possibility.
Yeah, I'd be curious. I really haven't thought about this in an electoral context. I was just seeing this as a self-preservation move by Kemp, because it's a lot easier for him a couple of years ago to go along with everything Trump was saying, because there really weren't any stakes in the game. It's throwing red meat to your base. He's pandering to the audience. He's riling up a MAGA base, but now there's consequences. There are very real, tangible consequences that everyone in this camp is facing. It's very easy for him to sit back and say, no, can't do that. I'm not gonna do it. Wash his hands of it. I don't think this is anything more than just self-preservation. And it makes him look like he's doing the right thing. But I think that's just because it's easy. And if this was a year ago, 2 years ago, and a somewhat unrelated matter, and this is something that Trump wanted, I do think he would do it. But because there are really real tangible consequences that all of Trump's team is facing, I don't think he wants to go near it.
Real quick on that, Jordan, to be fair to Brian Kemp, he did stand up to Trump in 2020, 2 years ago, right? 3 years ago now, and said, no, there was no fraud here. So I don't care about your stupid fishing expedition. I'm not gonna cheat to help you win. So he's been strong, and not like a fake strong like Trump is, but standing up to Trump in 2020 with a Southern Republican base, that's a strong move, man. And by the way, if he ran, Georgia's pretty critical swing state at this point, and he has a history of winning it a couple of times. I don't want anybody to mistake what I'm saying. I'm not in favor of Brian Kemp. I'm just talking about the politics of it within the Republican Party. Sharon.
Yeah, and it could be interesting, right? Because here he's geographically poised. He rules with an iron fist. This is now his state party, and they're gonna do what Brian Kemp says. People kind of mistake that Southern draw, if you will, for an all shucks, I'm not really a strategist, but he's an assassin. He's an assassin in the state of Georgia. And so I think Jordan's right. It looks like he's full of integrity, but I see strategy in moving back to the old Republican ways here. And there are people, I think Jenke used the term, he could make the case that he could, beat Trump. I don't think he has to, because other Republicans are clamoring, and I'm hearing from people here in Georgia in the party that he'll jump in late if Trump gets fully entangled in these legal woes and they take him out. And Brian Kemp will be right there, and perhaps he can get the keys to everything.
Yeah, and guys, as a person who doesn't want Republicans to win, I'm a little worried about Brian Kemp too. I like it when he's doing smart, principled things and he's saying, no, this is the Constitution, we're gonna stick with it, and we're not gonna break the law on behalf of another Republican. It's hard not to admire that. But I don't want you to get all goo-goo-eyed about Brian Kemp. He's also the guy who was smart enough to steal an election from Stacey Abrams before the election, not after. And I think part of him is disgusted by the fact that Donald Trump doesn't know how to do this right. He's like, no, you get rid of people from the voter rolls, that way they can't vote for your opponent in the first place, right? And he did that when he had the power to do that in Georgia as Secretary of State. And that is a much more effective and cleaner way of cheating than what Trump did. And so here's a guy who is smart in the right direction and also in the wrong direction, so be careful about this guy. And Eclectic Miscellany, one of our members, wrote in, Brian Kemp is right in this case, but we shouldn't forget that he's also not above trying to illegally mess with elections. Just ask Stacey Abrams. Now, first of all, I love our members. Become one of our members, tyt.com/join, and we do the show with you guys. But it's a great point. And now get a load of this, guys. Today, Roger Stone comes out and says, maybe Stacey Abrams was right. Maybe Brian Kemp did steal that election. Roger Stone, the top ally of Donald Trump. Now, how is that for a topsy-turvy world? Of course, they don't care about Stacey Abrams. And of course, they don't actually believe that. And they were holding on to that secret opinion all this time? No, they're trying to bury Brian Kemp by any means necessary.
Let's play this clip because Brian Kemp gets, and then you comment on the other side of it, Jordan. Brian Kemp is asked about 2024 and aspirations and being drafted, if you will, all the time. He stays pretty true to the same answer, but he never really slams the door shut.
Is it fair to say the door is open a crack to that possibility?
Well, I always get this question like 3 or 4 times, and I just keep giving the same answer. So I would just say
You're not shutting it down, though.
I'm just staying focused on the state of Georgia, and I'll let folks like you speculate all you want on that.
But I just wonder, because as someone who's been out there with an independent point of view inside the conservative movement in the Republican Party, let's say down the line, Trump's stumbling politically or even has a conviction on a federal level, people could come to you and say, could you think about a late entry? That's what I keep hearing. I just wonder, are you open to that in any way?
Well, I would just tell you, I'm staying focused on the task at hand here in Georgia. You know, in politics, there's always doors opening and closing and everything else. But I've learned over the years it's best for me to stay focused on the task at hand, and the good Lord will take care of everything else.
So he's running, right, Jordan? I mean, doesn't that mean he's running? Okay.
Oh no, it's easy to just say, oh, I'll wait and see. Just rejecting that premise outright early on, closes the door on a ton of free press and publicity. Like, there's plenty of people in politics who will let the media entertain and that concept and speculate because it gets them press, it gets them attention. I don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong. I could see him vying for a vice presidential nod. I think taking his focus away from his current role right now, if that's something he wanted to do, he would already do it. You would see an exploratory committee. You would see people actually mobilized for a draft Kemp campaign. Like, there's a lot of infrastructure they would need to build before he actually did that. And we don't see that right now. So I think maybe a VP, but also let the media speculate so he gets free press.
Yeah, and by the way, he's met with DeSantis and Pence. I don't know what those meetings were about, but obviously those three not in Trump's corner these days. So maybe they were in cahoots. I don't know what that would entail. But I took that as, well, I guess he's less likely to run if he's collaborating with those two guys right now. But look, it's impossible to tell. The most important part, though, is for the moment being, he is acting on principle. And if you say it's also politically expedient for him, fine, no problem. I'll take correct action based on any reason, right? And especially from a Republican. So, and tons of our members are writing in like, hey, remember he pointed the gun at the kid's head in the ad, and remember it was a beef with Trump because he actually opened up Georgia before anyone else. Again, we're not saying that Brian Kemp's a good guy or that anybody should vote for him. And I'm a little worried that, I haven't seen a smart Republican politician in a couple of decades, and I'm a little worried about it. And so he looks like he might be one. And for now, though, protecting Fani Willis, and more importantly, the rule of law, you have to commend him on that one. Fair is fair.
I agree with you, but I just can't help but think. I mean, he's perfectly poised in this swing state of Georgia. He's sitting pretty. Could this be a strategy where, well, I'll just sit here on my perch, and when Christie flames out, Pence isn't really doing anything. I mean, he let the guy with the veneers, Vivek. I mean, he outshines these guys in their first debate. And I think Kemp sees an opening here that there's really not a lot of risk. He brings back the Republican Party, and the next thing you know, He's like a second coming of Ronald Reagan with a Southern drawl. Wrong or right?
I think he's got a shot. I really do. But who knows? And by the way, give you context. The other guy that's always mentioned in the same sentence is Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia. He has no chance. He's a normal corporate robot, and the Republicans are not going to go for it. Nobody's going to go for it. That's totally false hope on the Republican Party side. And I want Trump defeated in the primary, but Youngkin ain't going to do it. I'm not sure any of these guys are going to do it. But for the first time, I'm thinking maybe, just maybe, there is a guy who could do it. And it's the guy who already did it in Georgia. And we'll see if that applies in the rest of the country and if he even runs. But at least there's a glimmer of hope that there's someone who isn't nuts, as much as we disagree with him, as much as he's a right winger, who might actually be able to challenge Trump. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.